In the movie Forrest Gump, the ailing Forrest teaches a young man a seemingly silly dance. Later, Forrest and his mother watch her on TV, singing the same song and dancing the same steps. This person, who never wrote a single song, became a rock legend, Elvis Presley. The song she was singing, the one they performed together, was his iconic hit, Home, Sweet Home. Elvis Presley was born on January 8, 1935, on a farm in Tupelo, Mississippi. At the time, Mississippi was home to the largest African-American population in the U.S., and while there was occasional crime, the state's music scene was unparalleled. Elvis's mother, Gladys, had a beautiful singing voice. As a child, Elvis often sang with her and participated in the family's church activities. The church choir introduced him to the magic of music, and it was in this environment that his musical talents began to shine. In 1945, encouraged by his teacher, 10-year-old Elvis entered his first singing competition, performing the country song Old Sherry, and won second place. A few months later, on his 11th birthday, his father asked what gift he wanted. While he dreamed of a bicycle, due to financial constraints, he received his first guitar instead. Perhaps it was fate. Although he didn't get the bike, the guitar that would change his life was now in his hands. This guitar would eventually help him buy countless motorcycles after he became famous. In 1948, the Presley family moved to Memphis, Tennessee, the city where B.B. King made his name. The music scene there was even more vibrant than the one Elvis had grown up in. Despite his teacher thinking he was unfit for singing, Elvis continued to pursue music. At 15, with guidance from an older neighbor, he taught himself to play guitar. In an era without the internet, he seized every opportunity to engage with music, whether by listening to new records at local stores or watching performances in bars and nightclubs. Elvis not only explored white country music, but also developed a deep interest in black blues, which would lay the foundation for his future success. By 1953, after graduating high school, Elvis worked as a truck driver to make ends meet. However, his love for music and his vocal talent remained unwavering. He thought to himself that he couldn't spend his whole life just delivering goods. So he went to the famous Sun Records to record 2 songs as a gift for his mother. Opportunity often comes from creating it yourself. While he could have recorded music at any standard studio for a low cost, Elvis's real goal was to connect with people in the music industry and immerse himself in the world of music. At the time, blues music was more powerful than country music, but due to racial discrimination, black musicians found it difficult to break into the white market. Elvis, a white man singing black blues, was exactly what the record companies were searching for. Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun Records, repeatedly told his staff that if he could find a white singer with a black voice and feel, he could make $1 billion. Initially, when Sam Phillips heard Elvis's voice and noticed the young man, he dismissed him as just another folk singer and quickly forgot about him. Elvis waited expectantly for weeks, but never received an invitation from the record company. Unable to hold back, he returned to the studio several more times, but still had no luck. He auditioned for several bands, but none selected him. Some people said Elvis would never make it as a singer. Then, a year later, Sun Records needed a demo recording, and the original singer didn't show up. They thought of Elvis. On July 5, 1954, Elvis's fate began to turn. He was brought into the studio with guitarist Scott Mora and bassist Bill Blagg. Finally, the long-awaited opportunity had arrived. But due to his amateur training, he was far from meeting the professional standards, and after several hours, the producer was still not satisfied. During a break, Elvis casually sang a blues song, "That's All Right," and the other musicians began to play along. The sound, wild and raw, caught the attention of Sam Phillips, who was in the control room smoking. He was struck by the sound. This was the key to a billion-dollar fortune. And so, Elvis's first single, "That's All Right," was born. As expected, the radio success was huge, and the station played the record repeatedly, causing the phone lines to explode with calls. Listeners were calling in, asking whether this wild and captivating voice belonged to a black man or a white one. From 1954 to 1955, Elvis went on to cover songs and perform. In just 1 year, he went from being a truck driver to a rising star in the music world. More and more people began to notice this white singer with a soul as deep as any black musician's. Songs like Bobby, Les Paul House, and Mr. White Train came out of this period. Elvis even invented his signature dance moves by accident. Once, during a performance in front of a large audience, despite his stage experience, he felt nervous. His legs shook uncontrollably, so he decided to go all out, playing his guitar, singing, and shaking his legs, eventually adding a swing of his hips. It turns out, in a world obsessed with looks, this was the winning move. While others might have been called vulgar for such antics, Elvis's charm and these mesmerizing moves caused fans to scream. This is how Elvis began to take the southern U.S. by storm. However, to go from a small-town star to a global icon, he still needed someone to take him to the next level. On November 21, 1955, Sam Phillips sold Elvis Presley's contract to RCA's subsidiary, Victor, for $35,000, a price that shocked the market at the time. Tom Parker officially became Elvis's manager and would go on to change his fate forever. Looking back, Parker, a master of commercial operations, was the one who crafted the strategies for promoting stars. Once Parker took over, his first move was to get Elvis on television to build his idol persona. Elvis captivated audiences with his flashy outfits, unique sideburns, seductive hip thrusts, and signature dance moves. In a relatively traditional era, his performances were like a bombshell in the crowd, driving fans wild. However, this also sparked strong backlash from conservatives, and the religious community voiced their disapproval, with some even calling for a ban on this style of performance. Facing pressure from all sides, the TV networks had no choice but to air Elvis's performances with his lower half in view, which only amplified his influence. So what was the next step? Top-tier stardom needed top-tier quality and output. Colonel Parker wasn't shy about spending money, bringing in top musicians to accompany Elvis. 1956 was Elvis's peak year. Songs like Heartbreak Hotel, I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, and Hound Dog achieved unprecedented success. His self-titled album, Elvis Presley, spent 10 consecutive weeks at the top of the Billboard charts. The single Love Me Tender not only topped 4 major national charts, but also became one of his most iconic songs. But how about the billion-dollar profits? In his first year with RCA, Elvis's merchandise, ranging from shirts, scarves, jeans, and lipstick, generated $20 million in profit. But Colonel Parker's ambitions went far beyond that. Having understood the market thoroughly, he steered Elvis into the film industry. Despite Elvis's lackluster acting skills, no director could resist the cash cow he had become. In November 1956, Elvis's debut film, Love Me Tender, was released, with its title song becoming a massive hit. While Elvis mainly used his voice to carry the plot in the movie, the output from this period was still impressive compared to his later works after his military service. The United States had a draft system at the time, and on December 20, 1957, Elvis received his draft notice and was inducted into the U.S. Army in March 1958. Fans would later call this day Black Monday. On that day, Elvis cut his iconic hair, which was later sold for $15,000. During his time in the military, Elvis's mother passed away, and at just 23 years old, Elvis was devastated at her funeral. Life showed no mercy, though, as he fell in love with Priscilla Beaulieu, the 14-year-old stepdaughter of his commanding officer. The two got engaged in 1966 and married 4 years later. Their daughter, Lisa Marie, was born 9 months after their wedding. Interestingly, Lisa Marie would later marry Michael Jackson, but that's another story. In 1972, Elvis and Priscilla separated, and they divorced the following year. Elvis was known as the King of the Sea during that era, with many rumors about his relationships with famous women. It was said that Elvis had affairs with over 3,000 women, but his marriage to Priscilla was his only official one. After returning from the military, Elvis's career soared to new heights due to his outstanding service record. Girls everywhere wanted a boyfriend like him, and boys all dreamed of being him. After leaving the Army, his first album, Something for Everyone, was a huge success. Starting in the 1960s, however, Elvis's music career began to decline. The rise of the Beatles meant that Elvis was no longer the sole phenomenon. Nevertheless, his 1967 gospel album, How Great Thou Art, won him a Grammy Award. 2 years later, U.S. mail further solidified his place in music history. Despite enjoying married life in the 60s, Elvis was still convinced by his manager to continue making movies. However, the high-intensity work, drug abuse, alcoholism, and chaotic personal life gradually took a toll on his health. His poor diet caused him to balloon to 317 pounds, and the resulting body image issues trapped him in a vicious cycle. After all, his livelihood depended on his appearance, and his insomnia led him to rely heavily on sedatives and stimulants. This continued into the 1970s, and by then, his health was in critical condition. His personal doctor revealed that Elvis's physical health was even worse than that of an 80-year-old man. Yet, manager Parker kept pushing him for more work. In 1976, Elvis was constantly on the road for performances, often needing drugs just to keep up his energy. On August 16, 1977, Elvis collapsed in his bathroom and was pronounced dead at the hospital at the age of 42. Elvis's legacy is still a subject of much debate. One of the most common criticisms is his lack of original songs, but this did little to diminish his impact. Elvis's charm changed the way white people viewed black music and paved the way for the development of rock and roll. As John Lennon famously said, "Before Elvis, there was nothing."